Hey guys, it's Quana back again with another review. Tonight I am reviewing This Is Us Season 5, Episode 12, I think. It's entitled Both Things Can Be True. And I did not review last week's episode, which was a Uncle Nicky solo episode. I'm going to be a little honest. Don't come for me in the comments, but I didn't even finish watching last week's episode. I kind of know most of what happened. I saw it in bits and pieces and fragments, and then I went back to watch it and got to like minute 15 and kind of just gave up. I'm not the biggest fan of Nikki, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in tonight's episode, but I'm just getting a little tired of some of the solo episodes. I think some of them can be very good and profound when we've lived with those characters and we're getting a lot of new information that we didn't have before about necessary pieces to the puzzle. I didn't feel like we needed a solo Nikki episode, especially since it's been eons and we still really haven't gotten a solo Miguel episode. So I feel like you're going to give one to Nikki and we don't have one for Miguel. That's a little not fair. Anyway, here we are with tonight's episode. Do me a big favor, and before we get started, hit the like button and subscribe for all of my This Is Us content, all of my reviews, my thoughts. And if you guys really, really want me to, I will go back and finish watching last week's episode and drop a complete recap and review of that. But tonight's episode was a lot. And so spoilers for tonight's episode, if you haven't watched it, I'm going to be recapping it. I'm going to be spoiling it. I'm going to give you all of my thoughts and feelings and opinion from my big teachery brain here, and just an avid fan of the show. So tonight we got caught up with, it feels like everyone in the family, and we had a lot of storylines that weren't really interconnected, but we got a chance for the first time in a while to see what was going on in all of the three major Pearson households, which was really, really nice. And we hadn't done that in a while. And that was actually the form of the show to begin with. And it's my favorite way for the show to progress. So kudos to tonight's writing staff. They did a really, really good job of giving us these three households and showing us the different scenarios in which two things could be true. And so we're going to talk about it tonight. So it started with Kevin and Madison, and they're planning their wedding. And so their wedding planner was there, and they're talking with Nikki. Nikki wants to help out with the rehearsal dinner. And so Kevin drops the bomb that Miguel is going to be doing that. So Miguel's going to come over and talk Nikki through what he's already planned to do and let Nikki come on board. And of course, being the big star that Kevin is, this has already been, on all of the gossip mags, Us Weekly, right alongside Meghan Markle. And I'm surprised because Madison did not seem quite as overwhelmed by that. But definitely we find out that she's not 100% on board with the scale of this wedding. And I'm going to go ahead and just say it, guys. I like that they are really trying to make a concerted effort to write Madison into a more likable character. She always kind of has been, except for those first couple of episodes where Kate was just starting to get to know her. But we're getting to see more of her personality fully fleshed out, and I really appreciate that. That being said, I'm still not feeling the chemistry between her and Kevin. It still kind of feels very forced, very much Kevin trying to build the ideal of marriage that his dad and his mom had. And I don't feel as though he has the passion. That being said, you don't need like a fiery, burning, I could kill for you kind of passion to make a good marriage. But it just doesn't feel like they actually are really into each other. I'm sure it's a little weird being that like the actress playing Madison is Dan Fogelman's wife, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's probably a little weird, but anyway, moving on. Talking about that storyline, we have Nikki and Miguel. And so Nikki is trying to help out, which of course, Nikki didn't have 2 nickels to scrape together, but he wants to help out. And it's more about him wanting to kind of like be there for Kevin, but also investigate Miguel. And so he kind of calls Miguel out, which Miguel's already been through this, been there, done that, could write the manual, sell you tickets to the show. But he calls him out about marrying his best friend's wife. And so we get an extra little tidbit about the fact that he waited like 13 years before he and Rebecca got back in a connection with each other, before that even became a thing. And the show keeps teasing this, and maybe they're going to hold it off for the final season right before Rebecca dies, but like, give us more of that storyline and not just they met on Facebook, because it's quite evident they came together over like reminiscing about Jack, and their shared sadness and trauma kind of brought them together. But they seem like they have a pretty solid marriage and they're pretty comfortable with each other, so I would really like to see that. Obviously Mandy is, on maternity leave. She just had her babies. But I think the fans have been saying this for a while. And if the show ends without giving us a fully fleshed out Miguel storyline and Miguel and Rebecca storyline, it's going to be pretty disappointing, because they haven't really given Miguel his just dues. For someone who's been on the show since day one, they're really not, fleshing that out well enough. And it's really kind of sad to see. Moving into the flashback sequence, we don't get Rebecca for, again, obvious reasons, but we do get a flashback to Jack preparing to propose to Rebecca, which this is one thing that I think we didn't get before, and I've been complaining about the fact that some of the flashbacks felt very unnecessary, but it was very good to see this, because it was a very Miguel-centered into, again, Jack and Rebecca's romance, and how he was a pivotal point and a pivotal part of them getting together. And he's trying to help Jack rehearse for his proposal. And so, of course, classic comedic thing, the ring gets stuck on his finger and they're trying to get it off when who shows up but Mr. Malone, Rebecca's dad. Not gonna call him the B word, but sometimes I want to. And he's basically telling Jack that he's going to tolerate him. And Miguel's like, hold up, you don't tolerate Jack Pearson. This is the guy that you pray that your daughter gets to marry. This is the gentleman. This is a debonair man. He does anything for his woman. He is that dude. He's going to make sure your daughter is well taken care of, and he's going to care about her and be a true gentleman. And you need to realize, and seeing Miguel go to bat for him kind of softens Mr. Malone up a little bit, and he doesn't say, okay, I 100% accept you, but he kind of like says, I'll help you get the ring off, and that's their like merger. Now, before I go any further to any of the other families, I might miss a couple of things, plot points that happen here and there, because I don't know about anybody else, but I have to watch this using the NBC app, and NBC app was acting real stank tonight. I didn't appreciate it. Was like glitching and stuff, and then it wouldn't let me cast to my TV, so I had to watch it on my phone. So it was a little bit of lag here and there, and my commercial breaks I don't think were quite syncing up, and also it was kind of frustrating because then I couldn't watch it and read. Usually I like to like read the fan tweets while it's playing, and I couldn't do that, which was really disappointing. But anyway, that wraps up basically what happened in the past. Moving on over to Katie Girl. Katie Girl starting her new job. And of course, Toby is still not dealing with his feelings about being a stay-at-home dad, and he's still not talking to Katie Girl about how he feels, and he is miserable, and you could tell it from jump, and she's all excited about her new job. But her new boss is like, again, a B word, and being all stink, like not realizing that she's a mom who's just going back into the workforce and not being, kind of like understanding. Like he gets pissy at her for not coming to work like an hour early like he does. Like she's there on time. Y'all don't pay her any extra. She's not a salary employee, I doubt. So no. This is what's wrong with America. America feels like they should get a whole lot of extra time out of people for free, and they don't want to cough up the coinage, and they expect people to work and slave and dedicate their whole lives to these careers and these jobs, when these jobs will replace you. And as he said, there were a lot of other applicants, and she was not the best one, so they can replace her like that. So don't expect her to like jump through hoops just because this is your baby. Like, you probably are getting a full salary anyway. He sees her checking her phone because later on Toby and Madison are at the park with the kids, which I guess that's a thing. I wasn't that kind of mom, like going and taking my babies to the park. Like, they're babies, they can't play in the dirt. Okay, but I guess it's like mom time. And so she's waiting for, Toby to send her pictures, and she's having a full-on, like, missing her baby meltdown. But she gets it together, and she, helps the student to sing better by telling her the background to how Eliza is singing the song. And it made me want to go back and watch My Fair Lady, because that is my joint. And dude still was side-eyeing her. She didn't really have a confrontation with him. It was more or less like her telling him what was going on with her, and him just kind of like telling her, well, you're gonna have to just deal with it. But I'm gonna need for at some point in time for there to be a confrontation between the two of them, because I'll stand up for yourself, Katie girl, because he was wrong. Yes, you shouldn't have been on your phone while you were at work, but y'all didn't have any kids in that moment, in that scene. And if you didn't walk away and tell him, okay, I need to check my phone, check on my kids real quick, then you need to do that. But other than that, no, don't do it. But it was still good to see, because again, two things could be true. Let me go back. So the two things can be true, can be Jack is not up to the Mr. Malone standards, but he's still an awesome guy. Mr. Malone might not personally like Jack, but he's still a good guy for his daughter. Those can be true. Miguel maybe shouldn't have got with his best friend's girl, but he also waited a respectful amount of time, and he was pivotal in making sure they got together in the first place, so there would not be any little Pearsons running around if it hadn't been for Miguel helping him with that coat back in the day so he could go to the country club and win her over and all that kind of stuff. And in this situation, the two things can be true is that Kate should have been like focused on her job a bit more, but at the same time, her boss shouldn't have been acting like such a bastard. Oops, I said it. I'm sorry. I said the B word. But he shouldn't have been. Anywho, going back over to Madison and Toby at the park. Madison and Toby are talking, and Madison basically says she doesn't want to get married at the same venue that they've picked out. And so Toby is encouraging her to speak up for herself and speak her mind and tell Kevin. So she encourages him to say the same thing, because he doesn't want to be at home with the kids. Like, he's bored out of his mind. He loved his job. He wants to find a new job, and he wants to go back to work. Problem is, it's not like Kate asked you to stay at home, like you lost your job. So you do have to kind of roll with the punches. And maybe the thing is you have to take something lesser until you build back up. He's going to have to figure that out. But I feel like he's spiraling into his depression so much, and it really makes me worried, because I think, of course we know in the past, he made the comment, or in the future, he makes the comment at Rebecca's like little vigil that she wanted him there. So it made him seem like he was like distant from the family, like something's going to happen. And also he didn't come with Kate. So we don't know if he and Kate are going to be together. And the reality is, out of all these couples, if all these couples are together, that would be kind of strange for that many couples to stay married in one family. And for nobody to get a divorce. And he still, at the end of the day, does not speak his mind to Kate. Like, he just shows her some pictures on his phone, and he doesn't speak his mind. And the bad thing about Toby is, we have seen in the past, he is one that he will blame Kate for his own shortcomings, even though it's not Kate's fault. So I'm really kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in this situation. I feel like we're not going to necessarily get it next week's episode, but I think definitely by the end of this season, we're going to feel those tensions. I still feel like really weird about whether there should even be a sixth season. And the way that this season is building, I still feel like there's enough room for them to wrap everything up at the end of this season and not force it. I'd rather them go out kind of gracefully than to be like scrambling and for the last season to really suck. But hopefully they've already mapped out how they want to do this, and they will figure it out. But I'm it's kind of like watching Married at First Sight. There's a lot of couples on that show that I don't have a lot of hope for, and I'm losing hope for Toby and Kate. And it's sad, because if Kevin and Madison make it and Kate and Toby don't, that is a sad world. That is a sad, sad world. So anyway, of course, let's head over to Pearson's East Coast. Okay, you got Randall, he's going to group therapy and he gets to listen to all of the other transracial adoptees kind of support group. And he did the thing. Kudos to Sterling K. Brown and him and the writers, because that's them writing growth for Randall. We got growth because he did not steamroll over the other people. He did not talk. He didn't say anything. He just sat back and listened to their stories. But I liked how, as he was listening, he saw the connections in his mind, and we saw them through the flashbacks of like the guy talking about looking at the mailman, wondering like if the mailman was his dad. He was the first black man he's seen, and him going back and us seeing Randall in the store when he was curling his tongue and trying to see if the other black people could curl their tongues too. Or you had the one lady, the guy who was Korean, Jewish Korean. He was a Korean man. He had been adopted by a Jewish family. And you had the scene with like Randall and Jack was fixing his tie. It was nice to see that structure and to hear those stories. And so it was a Randall scene, but it really wasn't. It was really more focused on like the validity of his feelings, because I feel like a lot of fans have been feeling like Randall's feelings aren't valid, like he's not allowed to feel insecure and to be kind of lost in his identity and his search and understanding for how he feels about his place in the Pearson family. It's a very weird dynamic whenever you're talking about a family that is not biologically connected, because at some point in time there are the questions of how does this impact your children? How do they understand their own lineage? What are the stories that they tell their children? Are they going to keep those connections to family that you have created for them? Or are they going to disillusion? Like, it's so many things that could happen. And so I think that Randall is completely valid in his feelings, but a lot of fans have been in like the chats like, and so I feel like this was like almost fan service, like us getting to hear other people's voices and hear the validity of his perspective. And it was really nice. It sets up for something that's going to come later, and I'm excited for it, especially because one, we get a back-to-back 2-week-in-a-row episode, and y'all know those have been kind of scarce. And so finally, the most important thing that kind of happened this episode in terms of the title is Tess and so Randall's two things that could be true. So two things could be true are that Randall loves his family, but Randall also feels racially lost in the midst of his family. So we get to Tess, Beth, aka Bethany. Okay, mama said Bethany, get your life together. Felicia Rashad was on one tonight. I love to see it. Having her move in and be on the show more regularly, y'all, that gave me my whole, it's giving me my whole life. It's giving me everything. Like, we get Felicia Rashad back on our TV on family program. Like, this is where she lives. This is where she thrives. Like, it was giving me grown-up Claire Huxtable. And I feel like, I don't know about the rest of you, this is just my hypothesis. If after This Is Us is over with, if somebody wanted to kind of do like a Roseanne, okay, Roseanne is problematic, so we're going to take it and make it the Connors. If they wanted to do a show called The Huxtables and Cliff was deceased and maybe they just did not talk about him much, and Felicia Rashad took on the mantle and became the matriarch, if it was written by the right people and it was done well, I would kind of somewhat low-key live for that. Is snoring big time. Okay, but anyway, back to Tess and Bethany. So Tess is having her friend Alex over. Her friend Alex is her boo thing, and Alex is a transgendered youth, and Beth has been working on Alex's pronouns and trying to be accepting of this friendship. But low key, Beth did not plan for it to really be handled in the same way that you would your child having any kind of romantic love interest. So they run upstairs eating the jalapeno poppers, having their little study date, and Deja comes downstairs and is like, oh, where are they? I wanted to say hi. Deja knows she's slick for that one. She knew that door was closed for a reason. She knew they was behind that door. She was just trying to say, nah. If Malik and I can't be upstairs, you can't be upstairs either. She knows she was slick for that. Anyway, she's like, oh, they're upstairs with the door closed. So Beth is like, oh, hold up. Who is closing doors in my house? It is, I'm not looking forward to those years when my kids get older, because that's like newfangled in parenting, because you can't be closing doors. Especially, let me know down below in the comments if you were allowed to close a door in your mama's house, because I know I was a grown woman bringing my fiance over to visit to take a tour of the house, and it would have been like, hold up, why are the doors closed? Use is grown, but this is my house. So she goes upstairs, and they all hugged up, and they're kissing for like a second. It's like that. And Tess not only calls her mama a psycho, and got to keep her teeth, and then says to her, I saw the look on your face. Now listen, Tess is in a very precarious, confused state. She is a young woman. She is growing into her own, and she also does not conform to the gender normative rules of society. And she is a lesbian. I don't know if they've changed, if she has now said that she's bi. I'm going to go by what she initially came out as, saying that she was lesbian. But maybe she's pan. I can't remember what she came out as. Like, that was like 2 seasons ago. But anyway, her family has been like, kumbaya, rah, we stand up for our girl, rocking our flags, our rainbow flags, whatever. 2 things can be true. So Beth goes downstairs and gets some much sage advice from her very cool mom, who says, you're going to be disappointed, but you got to let your disappointment go and just roll with the punches, or she's going to basically drive a wedge between her, like what has happened between us. And they had a nice little touchy moment where Beth put her head on her shoulder, and it was like, mommy. And I was like, that's so sweet. It's so sweet. That was everything for the whole night. That made me like, they could have ended there. I would have been okay. But Beth eventually goes back upstairs after she has a long talk about how it's not that she's bothered, because she feels like she's trying, and I like that she tried to check her own biases and say, is that kind of why I was bothered? And she said, well, I did have plans for the future for her that I have to now let go of. And she said, well, those plans don't have to be let go, but they have to change, because what happens in her life might be better and more beautiful than what you could ever envision. I also think there is a little bit of like, Deja is their adopted daughter. So yes, Beth is going to, yes, Tess, you are going to get the more sensitive treatment right now, not just because of your gender non-conforming, or non-normative, no, you know what I'm trying to say, that she is a lesbian, that is like the reason for the discomfort. But some of it is just, you're the first, because yeah, they went through this with Deja, but let's be honest, like Beth and Deja's relationship, while solid, it's not the same as Beth and Tess. She's raised you. You came out of her hoo-ha. You're her first child. And saying like it's different with Annie. Annie's like 9. Who is Annie? Annie ain't trying to date nobody. Like, you're the first. So you're going to go through all of these things a bit earlier. And it brings me back to like how Kevin sometimes goes back, or even Kate reflects back on like their upbringing, and they see things differently from what they really were. Like they think, oh yeah, well, mom was just so into Randall, and she loves Randall more. And it was just, they have more in common. It wasn't that she loved him more. It was easier because they have more in common. So with Tess, Beth tries to go back in and talk to her and say, listen, first of all, you will not call me out my name. So you need to check yourself on that. But secondly, like, I love you. You're perfect. You don't have to do anything to change for me. Like, I'm going to love you no matter what. And Tess doesn't quite it doesn't seem like she's really fully accepting of that. And I think I feel bad. She's a child. So it's not right to say it's unfair for her, because all kids feel that way to some extent. But it is kind of like, I don't think she sees not even the effort, because it's not about effort, because as a parent, you don't ever want your kid to feel like it's effort to love and accept them. I don't think that she's rationalizing and seeing that Beth has done all these things. Like, it was Malik and Deja, you can't be upstairs. It was a full meltdown about Malik having a baby and dating Deja. Like, she just as a kid, you forget those things. And so she's just forgetting those things. So it's not even about her identity or who she's romantically involved with. It's just, okay, this is the person you're romantically involved with. You're a child in my house. You ain't gonna be up in here smooch in the discussion. So that really kind of infuriated me from a parent perspective. But as a teacher and someone who is accepting of children, I wanted to understand where Tess was coming from. But I felt for Bethany, okay, in that moment. But I was glad that her and Mama C got to have a moment. I appreciated that. And so, of course, the big takeaway from the night, Toby doesn't confide with Kate. Madison does confide with Kevin, and we find out a little bit more about her background, that her dad took her to Japan when she was a little girl, and then her parents got divorced, but she wants to get married in a small garden ceremony, basically with just the family. So that's going to be cute. I can't wait to see it. Kevin reaches out to Randall and asks him to be his best man, and they're finally going to sit down and have their long drawn out. This is basically, so all y'all people who don't like talking about race, y'all might as well go ahead and skip next week's episode. Let it go, because they're gonna be talking about race. But he calls Randall and they discuss going ahead and meeting up to have their talk. And yeah, that's basically where we are. So I think, like I said before, a lot of the arcs are coming to a closure. And so it really makes me wonder if this season is really going to end up being the last season, or if they're going to kind of do like a reducted season in season 6, where it's just going to be like a half season. Because when you get to the end of the arcs, unless they bring in and kind of do some stuff with those characters that we haven't seen, we're getting the closure. We're getting the growth. Kevin is maturing. So what do we do with him? Once he matures, you're going to make his life messy. Randall is maturing. Not to say that there's not things that they could do that would be interesting, but it would feel like dragging on. So I'm still on train, like, let this be the end. If they can make it to 22 episodes, if it's a wrap, it's a wrap. Let it go. Let it go out on a high note versus it feeling like a burden. I understand y'all want to get more Emmys and SAG Awards, but like, I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. But it was a good episode, guys. It was a good episode. Like 9 out of 10, A+. A+ for the writing staff of This Is Us for this week, guys. And this video has gone on long enough, and I've talked to you long enough. So I'm gonna let you guys go. But don't forget to do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you next week. It's gonna be on and popping. So get your popcorn ready. Take notes, because I feel like it's going to be a lot. All right, guys. So that's all for tonight. Until next time, toodles.